keep on trying to add Adam from Utopia as well.
I can hear you really
me as
well. No problem at all. No problem at all.
That's good.
Oh, do you know, it's
day?
silly season has started, right? And I'm kind of running around a little bit all over the place at the moment. I'm still at my desk working, actually. Yeah. So yeah, it's busy, but hey, we mustn't complain.
No, that's it. So what's keeping you busy? New inquiries and finishing
both
drawings
really.
And
I mean,
stuff like that?
we try to like kind of keep all of our projects at different stages, so we've got kind of a rolling thing going, which is nice. We've got some projects in build, we've got projects that are kind of in detailed design, and then projects at concept design, and then obviously, you know, the sun starts to come out, spring equinox, and then people think, oh my gosh, I want to do my garden. So
I know. I got a garden. So I forgot I had one.
Doing some like, new inquiries as well with trying to do work with that juggling act, but all good.
Yeah. No, but that's good. So just to start, whilst I'm trying to invite Adam again, can you explain your journey and how you got into designing in the first
It's a long journey. I'm old, Els. Are you sure you want to hear all that?
I'm so sorry. I don't know what's going on. It just wouldn't let me on. We're here now.
That's all right.
In the sauna, the sauna's messed up. I've been through 2 phones now. Matthew, hello. Thanks for joining us. Hi, sorry about that.
Hi, good to see you. Yeah.
That's no problem. That's no problem. So I was asking Matt about the beginning of him becoming the designer.
I'll try to keep it brief and a quick summary, but I guess I've always kind of, you know, been into gardens and gardening. He loved kind of the outdoors, and I've always been a bit of a creative soul as well. So I was always a bit arty at school and enjoyed all of that. But you know, going back in the day, things are different now. You know, everybody's got a lot more opportunity to follow their path and, you know, the thing that they love. But I remember my dad saying to me, you know, you're never going to be able to support a family, Matt, being an artist.
The typical dad.
That's right. He was like, go and do a geography degree. You're good at geography as well. So anyway, cut a long story short, after uni, I did traveling. I ended up kind of in the dot-com boom kind of thing, working for a little company, then went into advertising, which was obviously a real creative industry, but I was selling kind of the creative ideas and stuff. And I felt a bit repressed, really. I wanted to be coming up with all the ideas. And I started thinking about, you know, I would love to kind of do something different. And then I had this life-changing event that happened. I got caught up in the London bombings of 2005. So a bit of a near-death kind of experience for me, and that kind of whole feeling of, wow, I'm really lucky to still be here. You know, let's use a second chance. So I went back into advertising for a bit, but started to do some training at some design colleges, and I trained at KLC School of Design, very good college. Did a vocational course, and set up my business a year later, and I'm kind of, this is my 13th year on from that now.
Yeah, that's amazing. So it's quite
pretty much.
Venture,
I mean,
really.
I'd say that. I mean, I don't feel like that because I guess I've been working for 23 odd years. But what I'd say is that all of those skills I'd learned before in business, of creative ideas, running budgets, servicing clients service.
They just translated
so
fairly quickly.
I feel that was really lucky. You know, when I started out, there were lots of. I was probably in my 30s when I started designing gardens, and there were all these youngsters in their 20s. I was like, oh, I wish I'd started that young and all of that kind of thing. But it took me a little bit of time to realise there's also a benefit, you know,
with more maturity.
With others.
No, I was just going to say, with more maturity.
Sorry, go on. Exactly. I mean, the growth we've done in, let's say, 3 or 4 years, doing what you've done now, it would have probably took, you know, 10 years if you didn't have the skills that you inquired before, you know. So, you know, if I was to, we touched a little bit on one of the podcasts with another landscaper that stopped his business and started again in another area. And I know he'll grow really quickly because he's learned a lot, you know,
Yeah.
from previous years. So I think it's got some benefit with,
yeah,
with
I
starting
always,
a bit later.
always say that to
bit
career
more,
changes. I
you know,
always say, you know,
ideas.
don't underestimate what you've already got, all of those skills, because, you know, it's difficult enough
Yes.
starting a new job and doing a, you know, creative, you know, providing a creative service if that isn't what you've done previously.
Yeah.
So, but to be doing that and learning all the new business skills and all of the admin and all of that kind of thing, it's quite a lot. So it's handy if you've got some of those skills already. So,
No,
yeah.
I was gonna say, when did you fall in love with sort of garden design, and what made you go into? Was it, did you enjoy it from the start, or have you sort of slowly started to fall more in love with it now?
So I'd say I'm a designer that gardens as well. So I've always been a gardener. So I think that's the thing that I kind of pride myself on, is that I just generally love gardens, and, you know, that's spend my spare time basically is in the garden. So I'd always loved plants and gardens. But from a profession point of view, I went to Chelsea for the first time in 2007. It would have been, so yeah, so 2007, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. There's all these people like, you know, Andy Stearns and Cleve Wests, and they're all doing this for a living and earning, you know? I'm like, wow, so I can do something like that and earn money.
Yeah. I actually make good money doing what they love every day. So that kind of inspired you to, that's it. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do designing.
Yeah, I think so. I think I was probably a little bit intoxicated by the whole show experience as well. We know that shows, as wonderful as they are, they're not a true representation of building real gardens and everything that goes into that.
Yeah. But you have done shows
I love doing shows. I'm definitely
what are the benefits with the show gardens, and kind of how many would you choose to do? Because I'm interested between obviously working domestic, commercial, but then opting to do the show gardens. What would you say are the benefits, seeing as you've done quite a few?
So I would say that really shows are my only form of advertising, and I feel they're the best form of advertising. So when I started out, I tried leaflet drops, I tried adverts in kind of local, you know, kind of magazines and that kind of thing and everything. But show gardens, not only are they within the industry, do they kind of help build your profile, they help with you kind of networking and building a network of people. But I do think that they are a great opportunity to show, you know, what you can actually do in a tangible way. And, you know, there's a really good audience there. So personally, for me, they've been a great profile builder. And
the reputation as well. I guess it kind of builds your reputation because, you know, some of them show are so prestiged, aren't they, if you like. So suddenly, even with, you know, a young career, if you do very well doing amazing garden and you place well and stuff like that, suddenly you're kind of building a reputation, aren't you? You're kind of not just showcasing you're able to do it, but you're, you know, in your portfolio or anything like that, it's a big thing to have, right? Even for not, you know, I'm just seeing it from a landscaper's point of view now. You know, it's an investment, isn't it? I've never done a show, but I see it.
Have you guys done any show gardens yet? Yeah. Honestly, I'm telling you guys, you know, once you do it, you'll be addicted and you'll get the bug. Lots of downsides. There's a lot of time that needs to be invested. You know, it's really intense. It's a really intense build period. But you know, it really does allow you to push yourself, you know, push yourself to the limit to really kind of, as you said, Elle, showcase, you know, your skills and your passion, that kind of thing. But I've just been so lucky with all of the shows that I built. And I built with a range of different landscape, and I've always had a great experience in terms of, you know, great team build, bonding experience. You know, all working together, and it's almost like taking a real project and completely kind of distilling it into this really kind of intense couple of weeks. And you all have to work together. You all have to pull out. There's no kind of, saying, oh, that can't be done. It's a problem. You have to, if there's a problem, you've got to.
So when you're looking for a landscape, it's not just the skill, it's not just the quality, but it's the person, they've got to be the right person to kind of work with you.
Yeah, for me, so the last one I did was at Hampton Court, and I worked with Your Land Design, Lee Richards.
Yeah.
He's a you know Lee, don't you? Yeah, great guy. And so for me, that's what it all comes down to. A lot of I always say that one of the other big reasons I do what I do is because it has to be an enjoyable thing. I have to, all of the people that work as part of the team have to really enjoy it as well. It's not my show garden, and I do think designers do get a little bit an unbalanced kind of amount potentially of the publicity, and I always try to share that and kind of to promote all of the team that are involved.
Sure, because also they'd want to come back as well. Because if you weren't doing that, you'd potentially lose a good landscaper because you haven't shared the experience properly. You've taken all the glory. So it's good that you're saying that you kind of recognise that they've helped with the build, and then we'll follow on to, I guess, the next one.
Yeah, I think so. It's got to be a good experience that they enjoy, but also it's a great opportunity for them to also network at shows and to show their work to other designers, right? That are all at the shows.
Exactly. Yeah. I had a chat about it, and I don't know if you know. So he's called Cornway. The guy's called Cormac. He's done Chelsea, so he's based near me, and he's I don't want to say he's an older landscaper. He's got maturity on me, and I really value his knowledge, and his work is fantastic. And it was a year or two ago. I said I really want to do a garden show like Chelsea or one of them, and he said, you have to love it. You have to put everything in it. You're not doing it for money. You can't do it for that. You do it to like you say, showcase yourself. So I mean, with what you're saying and the relationship with landscapers and designer, and I think that's something we wanted to hit on, and maybe we can use this kind of moment to hit that relationship between a designer that has a creative input and a landscaper that has the ability to put that creativity to life, right? So I've worked with a number of designers, and I had you on the phone earlier, Matt, and it was really nice chat, and I kind of want to translate what we were talking about. And it took me years to admit that a designer is better than me, because they are designers. I'm not a designer. Like, my hands were not meant to hold pencils. I don't have the creativity like you or some designer, Paul Baines or Lydia, that I've worked with. So, I would say it's been in the last 3 years that working with designers and loving the projects, and actually I prefer working on the design and on my own stuff. That's what I want to hit, basically. So why would you want to work with designers? The importance of the relationship with landscaper to designer, and I want to hear from you, obviously, and what do you think makes a really good relationship between you and a designer?
Well, so when I started off, obviously, I was one-man band, very much kind of trying to do everything. And also not reaching out as well to landscapers or specialists in different fields as much as I should have. As you grow with experience, and as I have over the years, I've learned that the best gardens I can make are the ones whereby I build a team of people that have got all the strengths that are needed to do that. And so I've got certain strengths, but I've also got things that I'm not so strong at. And so if you bring in those people that do it, that's going to be the best possible product for your client, right? So I think that's my starting point for all things, is kind of, you know, I know it's a bit cliche to keep saying it, but for me, it really is about building strong teams when it comes to making gardens.
Yeah.
So I think I've got a bit of OCD, without a doubt. And one of my things is, and somebody once told me this actually when I was training, that when it comes to detailing design and what you provide as a designer, the more detailed, the more construction drawings, the more of a specification you can give, the less ambiguity there is in there for your vision or your design not to be built as you have it in mind. So for me, that's my kind of, that's my role, is to say, right, not only is this the vision, but this is kind of how I see it being built. But what I recognize at that point is that I'm not a builder, right? I don't do it every day. And it might be, and it definitely is the case, that the landscapers I'm working with might have a better way of building.
It doesn't always translate into real life. And I guess it's given the landscapers the freedom to put their sort of touches on it just to make it more bespoke to the situation.
Yeah, and that can happen on site, but I think if you can bring that process in even earlier, so during that design detailing stage, if you reach out to landscapers that you've got good relationships with and say, I don't know how to do a particular joint, or I don't know how to do a certain thing, I'll often get on the phone to one of my colleagues and say, sorry, it's Matt here again. You know, what do you think about this? I was thinking of building it in this way. What do you think? And just to get that initial that input at that stage is really, really helpful. But you're right, Adam, it might come that when it comes to site and, you know, site specific conditions and things, you might end up needing to adapt that construction method as well. So I think it's all about having that, for me, it's all about having that relationship whereby you recognise that the more you discuss things, brainstorm them, the better
I really like your
proactive
approach. Of as you're designing, if you're unsure, making those phone calls then, as you say, before you go any further, because I've not had the pleasure of, I've worked with Patrick Clark, who is an amazing guy. He's lovely. I'm only stepping into the world of designers now. I mean, for me personally, so I do my own designs. They're very simple, but I wanted to build a team that do simple perfectly. And once I'm happy with that, then we're kind of build from there and start. And I've been fortunate enough this year, I've been approached by quite a few designers. It's having that, like, your proactive attitude, because I think last year I had a couple of designers send me stuff and it didn't make any sense. The design, they hadn't asked the client the budget. When I spoke to the client, they designed I think it was like an 80 grand garden, and they had like a 15 grand or 20 grand budget. So the designers hadn't done any sort of research or homework. Whereas I guess with you, from what I'm listening, is that you're thinking about so many different things before it even gets to that sort of, before it gets to the stage.
Well, I think it does come with experience. And I'm not saying that I haven't in the early parts of my career made life more difficult for myself than it needed to be. But I guess what you do is on every project you learn, hopefully, how you can do it better, and that's kind of what I've always tried to do. And so the detailing we do and the specifying and everything is, like I said, it's all about trying to make it really clear about what we're trying to achieve, what the client's expecting us to achieve. So there are no grey areas. And whenever I get the opportunity to talk to design students or that kind of thing, I really do bang on about how important. It's all very well having a lovely kind of pretty picture of a garden, but the more you the more you can specify in detail, the better it's going to be for everybody. And as you said, Adam, it doesn't need to be 100% exactly how it's going to be done, but at least there's been some thought that's gone into it, that can be brainstormed and talked through.
And just to bring that up, because I get an array of designs that I've worked off. So I've had the design, let's say, from this company called Aurelia. So their designs, you have breakdowns on everything. So like we were talking, if you've got a segment of this drawing, you've got another page, but I know the designs are really expensive. And some other designs, you just literally get a drawing of the garden with a small spec. with maybe some materials, sometimes no material, and it says materials to be decided with clients and so like that. So you, as landscapers, obviously you know the way you work, Matt, and you're detailed on. I've seen your drawings because I had the pleasure of seeing them on a project near me, and they're very detailed. But on the other scale, you know, if you're a young landscaper, it's the first time you work with a designer.
Just to say, I'd say don't be put off. I mean, I've got quite a, I guess, energy about me that I will push through. But yeah, if any landscapers listen, don't be put off if you had a couple of bad experiences with designers. Just find, it's the same with clients. Not every client's going to be suitable for you, and not every designer's going to be suitable for you. So just keep putting yourself out there and just keep working until you find the right designer. Because
I think that's important. But you know, after does it translate with the customer? So a customer of yours, Matt, might say, "I just want the drawing of the garden, and I don't want any, you know, how do you call it when you have the detail stuff? What would you call that? Yeah, construction drawings. Is that part of your pricing?
And to be fair to all the designers out there, and all the landscapers, we've got a breadth here, right? We've got a spectrum, and often it's based on budgets, you know, and the size of the gardens, and sometimes it might be that the budget that the client has doesn't allow for a huge amount of design time, which will cover all of those stages, and that was the case when I started off. But you know, it might be, for example, let's just take a smaller project. Let's say, for example, let's imagine that they have just said they just want a plan and a visual. I still feel that it's within the designer's interest to, at the very least, kind of produce a bill of quantities, say, for example, which at least breaks that design down into all of the kind of elements that are in the garden, and ideally areas, volumes, sizes, that kind of thing. So that's the first starting point, right? And then there'll probably be areas in the garden that actually probably don't need construction drawings, like laying surfaces, because, you know, a landscaper will know how to do all those kind of things. But if you've got a bespoke, say, pergola, you've designed something that is unusual, again, I think it's kind of, it's within the designer's interest to say to the client, look, I've designed you something bespoke here. It's really worth you paying me, you know, a few more hours to put some sketches together so that we can.
Yeah, to make sure
a bit of common sense, I think. As you progress, and hopefully you get the opportunity to work on bigger budgets, and you have a client that understands. You know, for us as designers, one of the big problems that you have is people understanding the value of design time. They can very much understand the value of buying stone or buying plants or tangible things, but you know, and they'll kind of pay for a solicitor or, you know, a professional in that capacity. But when it comes to something like kind of design, they're like, oh, they can't quite see the tangible value in the same way. But what I've experienced myself with my own career is that the more detail I give, actually, not only is the better the result of the garden, but actually there's more potential for cost savings because there are less mistakes that are made.
So actually, touching on that is, you know, so if I'm on a project and I'm a young landscaper and I've got this opportunity to work on this beautiful project, but I'm not sure about a lot of things, and I'm having to contact the designer to clarify things and having more site meetings. And so, you know, in some ways, by having those drawings well and truly detailed, not that you wouldn't walk away from the project once you designed it, but you have the opportunity to say, but the drawings are made, they're detailed. It's not going to have aftermath questions, if you like. You know, like, oh, I'm not sure, how do you want this pergola build? How high do you want the rafters to be? You know what I mean? It kind of cuts all that nonsense, and it's on paper, and actually you don't have to ask those questions, right? You're saving time for the customer, for the designer, for everyone.
I think the old adage that you're only as good as your last garden is very true. And I think actually that for me, I've always kind of had this commitment to wanting to make the best possible garden, because I don't want a happy customer, because a lot of my work actually comes through from referral as well, right? I mean, that's the big percentage of where a lot of my leads come from, is people referring me. So sometimes, again, I think it's in your interest to invest a little bit more in terms of the time, if it means there'll be a better garden at the end of it, for sure.
Yes, because again, that garden's going to be in your portfolio. So sometimes, I think we touched on it on the last podcast. As landscapers, you'll do things, out of what you've allowed in time or cost and stuff like that, just to make sure that project is done.
Well, I've seen you guys working on some of your videos and stuff, and I saw today, Els, you like with your in the deck where you kind of got the reveal kind of thing for the manual underneath. So so that passion for that kind of level of detail, I think any good designer would kind of have as well. So we've already got something shared there in common. We're wanting to produce.
What's quite nice is that's just a decking job, but the project I'm on is for Paul Baines, and I really like working with him. He's a great designer. I love his design, but I'm allowed to add those little bit of detail. I don't know. So I'm going to just talk about my relationship with a couple of designers and work with a few. Is you get some designers, like, you run ideas, because at the end of the day, I don't want to be a landscaper that just walks into a design and copy paste. Although we're there to do that, but I've got a creative mind as well, in my own way, and I like the practical side and making little hatches and making things disappear, or all those little bits and bobs that I really enjoy. And what I like is when designers as well are open-minded to that. And with Paul, I said, oh, we need to do this. What do you think? And when he does, he says, no, flat out, no go. And I'm like, okay, but he'll give me a reason. And then once he gave me that reason, I'm like, yeah, that's why you're a designer. But in some other ways, I say, oh, I want to do this. What do you think of that? Or it might be just a change of material. I want to use those cobbles, or I want to, do something, whatever it may be. And you might be like, oh yeah, really like that idea.
I think probably just a couple of things on that. I think as I said before, I have relationships with landscapers whereby they've got loads of experience, and I love to hear and have an open dialogue. So if they think there's a better material or a better way of doing something, I don't always agree, and we don't always go with it. But sometimes I definitely do, and I think, oh my god, yeah, that's much better. And so I don't think either party should have like a, let's say, pride or something, which means I'm not going to listen just because I want it my way. That's
exactly. And you might learn. So I wanted a moon gate because I really like, the moon gate's a Corten one. And we did this courtyard garden with a Corten water feature. So, that'd be great, walk out to the garden and frame in the view.
That's where you get those cool ideas from, is that you don't want people that just are agreeable, especially in your team. You want people that push boundaries, and you might not agree on everything, but something will hit, and an idea will come out of somewhere.
Yeah.
Exactly. And actually, you gave me a real good reason why we shouldn't have it, and I learned from a bit more designing perspective, So I think we can kind of give and share.
Maybe the Moongate thing was kind of crossing into the design toes a little bit.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, that was.
You can let loose as well.
Paul, did you say maybe that was pushing him a little too far? But I think the other thing as well is when you have these kind of conversations, I always say with the guys on site, no matter who's working on site, I love to kind of talk to everybody that's doing that work and understand whether they've got any issues or, you know, what they're doing. Yeah. I think it's really important that we work as a team, as design and landscapers, so that really you should have those conversations between us and not with the clients. You know, that way you kind of, neither party are undermining each other, you know? So.
Yeah. Yeah, because you've got that grey area where, you know, like you were saying, you don't want to make, you know, a landscaper look bad, or vice versa, make the designer, or well, you didn't think about that, did you? You know, it's not kind of like, you want to have each other's back, right? And at the end of the day, I quite like, you know, the few phone calls we had, it was quite black and white with you. You know, it was, you know, boom, that's how I work, this is how I work, because we haven't worked together, we haven't even met each other, and we ended up on this project due to circumstances, right? And it's a shame, and we won't go into too much detail about that one because, oh wow. But going back on that honesty and relationship, so with Paul and Lydia, it's the same. So going on the planting, so the planting scheme is all designed, and that's something I just leave to the landscaper, the designers, I mean, to buy the plant, because they got margins in the plants. And I feel like that's important for the designer to not just be able to make money on the design, because that's what they do, but as well have the ability to be a part of the project. When I was, the first project I did with designers, I was like, no, this is my project now, you know? And I was very protective over it. And now I feel, you know, having those conversations and understanding those things as you grow makes the relationship between you and the landscaper or vice versa just so honest, so true, and
I think it's just have a really. I mean, I try to be, you know, as fair and clear. I think it's all about being clear, isn't it? Really. That's how you build a good relationship. I mean, with the example you just used there of plants and who supplies them more margins, you know, and design. There are different designers work in different ways, as do different landscapers. So, you know, some landscapers will supply the plants and take full responsibility for those plants, and the designer will just specify them. Other designers will supply plants and trees because as you said, at the end of the day, there is, as with materials in landscaping, there is a trade price for something, and then the opportunity to put some margin on. Exactly. That margin is not just kind of an extra amount of money, it's actually to cover the time involved in sourcing, right? Those plants and all the admin that goes in behind it.
And the relationships you build over years with nurseries. And the time you take to go to nurseries and understand what's good and what, you know, so those margins are really needed. You know,
but again, you know, there has to be clarity on that, so that, you know, if you are supplying plants and trees, you have to, you know, and you're putting a margin on, and you're to pay for your time and everything, you're also putting that margin on as a security kind of factor, and you have to take responsibility for those trees and plants as well.
So that can be quite tricky, because if you're not planting them, you are putting kind of the trust. Obviously, if you know the landscaper and you know he's not a total, you know, you'll be fine. But if it's a young guy who's not sure and he's doing it wrong, that's a risk to take as well, isn't it?
For me, we're building a garden, right? And a garden is about plants. So for me, I always like kind of, I'm really kind of, we set out all of our plants. Although we do a planting plan, what I've actually found, and I'm finding more and more, is that although I do designs and they're all on paper and they're all specified, I feel a big part of the creative process is actually being on site as well. So, for example, it might come to positioning stone, for example. I actually really love to be there working with the landscaper, because, you know, you can draw it on a piece of paper, but we all know that stones are different shapes, you know. They look different at
It's the
different
same
levels on
like facing trees as well.
Site.
Being on site to face the trees.
Exactly. So making sure that, you know, you've got the best side of that tree, they're in the right place, they're not blocking views that you might have not thought about. So for me, that setting out stage and being involved in the planting is really important. Now, we don't get the time to actually plant the plants, but what we do is we check the planting, we give advice on the planting, so all the basic stuff about certain plants. And for example, I've got a garden being planted at the moment which has got loads of Irish Germanica in it, and I've learned that previously I'd set out all of the Irish Germanica, but I hadn't given the instruction that Irish Germanica have a rhizome on the top, and it's kind of like a storage vessel. It needs the sun. So you want, like, the Irish, you want them to be facing south, and you want that storage, that rhizome to be above the mulch layer, so it's not covered. And I had, everything had been turned around or in different angles facing north, and they were all covered with mulch. So, you know, different plants have different needs as well. And I think it's down to the designer to make sure that you communicate those things and that you check that things are planted properly, not too deep and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah. No, it's important because obviously landscapers are often more buildery and less green-fingered. So, I mean, I started my business as a gardener as well, a bit like you. I love gardening, I love plants, and that I think helps with working with designers because we've got that common ground, and I know how to tame for them. You know, I've worked in beautiful places, and you know, having that same understanding always works really nicely because you know you can do all the hard landscaping you want. I have that great belief that it's the planting that brings it all together.
It's a really important, right? So, like,
I really think it is. I mean, the borders you leave and the spaces you leave and stuff like that. You know, it's only when the plants
and those plants in. It's at that stage it actually starts to feel like a garden.
It really does. You know, I've been on the project for a few months now, and it's just it's flat, and the grass is gone, the plants were all gone, and we've done hard surfaces after hard surfaces. Once the pergola went up, lovely, and now we just put the first few trees, and I'm like, we know we're getting somewhere, and the plants arrived. I'm like, I'm really excited, even if it's not going to look like much this season, but next season is going to just, this garden's going to, you know, I really value and I think that's probably why that I value working with designers more than maybe when I was a young landscaper. I would not leave bigger borders enough. You know, I mean, talking about doing raised beds and the borders are so narrow that the plants have no chance, right? And you know, that's something I've learned over the years, that the bigger the borders, the better. You know, but it's all things that you learn and you know, you move on. But it's one of my favourite parts.
That's what I look for. One of the main things I look for in a landscape, and landscapers that I really admire and I really enjoy working with, is that they do really. That's why I always say to clients, don't allow the builder, if you're having a new home, to build your garden. Because landscaping is a very different thing, right? It's not only are you laying different kinds of materials in different ways, but this is also a living environment, and it's a garden, and you've got a growing medium, soil, which is so important. Builders don't understand that aspect. If a landscaper, however, comes at it and also doesn't have that same respect for the soil and for the plants, then how are they any different from a house builder? So for me, the best landscapers I work with are the ones that, when we start a build, they really understand that protecting that soil on site is really important, and following the spec that they kind of, you know, put the subsoil in one pile and the topsoil in another, try to avoid compaction, try to avoid kind of the roots around existing kind of mature trees, all these standard things which may seem overkill, but actually they're really, really important to the success of the planting in the garden. And then when it comes to the actual soil itself, what you put in and the depth of it, making sure there's no building materials that are left within those soil beds. You know, that really bothers me sometimes if all of a sudden I'll find a paver or something floating in a bed that I'm planting, and I'm like, come on, no, can't do that.
Yeah.
You know, and it's that level of, I think, kind of respect for the planting area, which I look for. I
was just going to follow on from that. So, for any landscapers out there looking to work with a designer, what would be the top things what would you look for? What would you sort of say to a landscaper? What should they be doing in order to kind of attract a designer?
Well, I think what we're all looking for, like I said at the beginning, is we're all looking for the same result, which is a great garden at the end of it, right? So ideally, you're looking for landscapers that can demonstrate experience. So, you know, I'm always going off recommendations as well of people that have told me they've had really good experiences with certain landscapers and that kind of thing. I think for me, it's also about that rapport and like kind of having that open dialogue. And I think that, you know, it's about having an equal respect for what each person, what the designer or what the landscaper brings to the team. And as soon as I know I can have that kind of dialogue with a landscaper and I'm not going to feel like, you know, my views aren't going to be heard, then I think that's really important as well, is being open with each other and acknowledging as well. It doesn't necessarily mean as a landscaper that you're going to have had experience in all of the areas. So again, I think it's about being open about that. And I love it when and often you find this with a show garden, right? Because often you're doing things that you haven't done before because you're trying to push boundaries and a landscaper hasn't done them before. So you both admit to each other, you've got no idea how to do this. But that's when the fun bit starts, because you start, you know, brainstorming it and thrashing ideas and talking to suppliers and finding the best way to. So I think that's the other thing I look for as well. You know, is I look for people that are solutions focused rather than, you know, identifying a problem, because we can all say that's a problem and that's going to be really hard to do and you can't do it. But actually, what's always much nicer to have is somebody just say, "Ooh, that's hard. Scratch head. I'm really not sure to do that. But actually, let me go away about it. And I think actually you might be able to do it this way, that way, that way." So that's always, isn't it, much more pleasurable way of working.
Yeah, I think that's the best part of our job sometimes. You know, I get messages saying like, "Wow, I can't believe you shared this on social media. You haven't done it and you're just sharing it to potential customers that." You know, the decking I'm doing on the metal frame, that's the first one I've done. You know, but I get so many other landscapers, and you, like you say, you brainstorm about it, you ask questions. This guy's done training about it. You can share some input on what he's experienced. But you know, you can do a day training on metal framing and learn the tricks, but it don't all translate to reality, right? So, I mean. I think for me, that's the best part about the industry, is actually hitting a problem and just like getting down and dirty and solve it the best way possible.
Sharing, which is lovely what you guys are doing. I think it can only lift us all up the more we share. I know designers have been really bad with it. There's been, you know, historically, there's been lots of kind of discussion around why don't we share kind of what our individual fees are, or, you know, certain things that we've done. You know, there's a lot of kind of almost secrecy, and it's probably the same in the landscaping world as well. You might find a new way of doing something, and maybe you might think to, or maybe the kind of the first thought might be, "Oh, I'm going to keep that to myself because that gives me a bit of an advantage." But
beneficial for everyone,
the more we share, the better it's going to be for all of us. You know.
Exactly. I think this platform is great. I you know, since I've met you, I've watched your gardening videos. You know, that you do. I really enjoy them. You know, who knows? You know, maybe you're a monkey in a making. But
Adam's going there, you look like a dog.
You know, I love the fact that. but you know, like all of this sharing and all of this information that like we learn by doing mistakes or by trialing or by this, comes back to this platform, and actually, you know, working with designers and working with landscapers or even electricians that bring new things, you know, like new systems. And I think
the
the
other thing it
beauty
does
of
as well,
sharing
Els,
is
is I think
great.
it also gives more of an insight into our industry and everything that's involved. It gives us more credibility
Yeah,
as well. So, I mean, a lot of what the public see
yeah,
is these TV makeover programs. I won't mention any particular names, where they have very low budgets and things are done very quickly. And you could think really that anybody could design a garden or anybody could build a garden the way that, you know, what's put across. Whereas I think it's down to us who actually, that, you know, are in the industry and doing it all the time, to share what we do, share with each other, because then I
yeah.
think it will become more, people will become more aware of everything that is involved, and the fact that we are professionals, you know, and that we are a service that deserves to be paid, you know, you know, a
I
fair
think
wage.
we're all raising each other's standards, aren't we? Because we're seeing different
Yeah,
videos from
no,
different landscapers,
exactly.
and oh, I'd love to be able to do that. And it's just having, everyone's got their own different techniques. And I think obviously watching your stories, it's
Yeah,
you're trying, especially with the deck, because you're trying something new. But all that does is it invokes trust within the client that this guy is new to him, but the quality is amazing, and he's sticking at it. He's thinking through carefully, and there's nothing but good that can come from that, really.
no, exactly. I mean, anything that anyone does, that you're a designer or you're a landscaper, and like what you were saying, Matt, I mean, the fact that we're not just like walking down the street, we look dirty tradesmen, right? We can be more than this, right? We can really showcase what we do at a high standard, and we can, you know, you can showcase your gardens, you know, even with like drones and things like that. You can take beautiful pictures of what you created on paper to reality. I mean, I just love it. I just love it. You know, I'm living, you know, my best life, because every day, you know, you meet
Yeah,
new people, new
we are. We are.
suppliers,
I do think we're really
and that's,
lucky
you know,
to work in
Sure.
what we work in, and you know, and I do think it's possible to make a good living out of what we do. I think it comes from
I think
passion.
so.
I think it comes from, you know, I think it comes from the acknowledgement that yes, this is a creative process. Yes, we're creating something beautiful, but this is also a business, right? And we all have to make a living at it, which is
Yeah.
relative to the input and our skills, and you know, that we bring to the party. So yeah, I think things are going going in the
Yeah.
right
So
direction.
just to send it in the wrong direction, you know,
Yeah.
the
I mean,
SGD obviously posted something this week. I don't know if you're aware of, about artificial lawn and artificial plants. It got a little bit of
Yes, yeah, I'm an
traction.
SGD member.
We kind of wanted to hear your
Yeah.
thoughts, maybe.
Well, okay. Well, let
Uh,
me ask you what
um,
your thoughts are
go-
first.
go on.
so I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and say it, because I'm not afraid to say it. I've laid my fair share of fake grass. You know, and that is it, because you know what? Actually, some small gardens we did, they're the perfect material for a growing family with dogs. But again, we touched on it, Adam, that the heat, this summer, or last summer, I was cutting fake grass during the summer, and my knees were burning. I mean, you know, it's got some definitely things to look out for. But I think it's got a place in the market. I don't think, you know, the projects I want to be doing in the future will have fake grass. But yeah, you know, so we had two teams going, two landscaping teams, one tree surgery and one garden
I think
maintenance
it's
and that
done.
stuff.
Yeah, I
We did
agree
them
with you.
wrong.
So I agree with.
And,
I guess if it's
you
a
know,
holiday home and there's the person wants less maintenance, but I guess it's down to the landscaper to have something in them to say, right, if we're doing it, it has to be a square or rectangular shape. Otherwise, if you're doing curves, there's so much wastage. That you kind of have to, okay, if we're going to do this, then it has to be like a set size. So there's
well, don't Don't check my Instagram, because I did one. It was like swells and all sorts of curves and ripples. The wastage. I mean, the good thing with fire is it disappears. No, I'm joking, but it's true. I mean, you got the environment's impact that it has is huge. But yeah, I think it's all
so I'll tell you my opinion,
the,
and that is that I think.
Yeah, go on.
So I've always been the kind of person that doesn't want to dictate to people about what is in, what isn't, what isn't, that kind of thing. I will always start off by having a clear and a strong opinion and recommendations. And I always say to my clients that I'm going to tell you what my recommendation is and what I really believe, even if it's different to what your thing was. If we have another conversation and you really disagree with it and you want something, it's your garden. And then that's down to you. I've given you my recommendation, but I'm not going to fight you any further on it. So that's kind of where I've got to. But when it comes to certain things now, I do feel as an industry, we have, I think we do have to have some standards or some levels. And we can't go around talking about sustainability and saying how gardens are potentially the answer to a lot of climate crisis if we then have things which are completely contradictory, which is obviously, you know, artificial grass is one of those in terms of the material it's made from. So yes, I can see that there's been a place for it in some family gardens. It's been practical, all of that kind of thing. But I think it is up to us now, just as to force change, basically, to say, you know, actually, I really don't think that that is the right thing. And it goes against all of the things I believe in, I preach. So I'm not going to design that into your garden. I can't make you not have it, but, and I think that's where I've got to now. I think just from a personal point of view, I really honestly believe that a real lawn or, you know, a whole range of different other kind of mixed kind of species opportunities you can have, or gravel gardens or whatever, are all so much better than that product, really, because I've seen how they wear generally. I know you get different kind of qualities, and I really do struggle with the idea that all of that will end up in landfill.
Yeah, I mean, and it doesn't take long if you don't look after the fake grass. It doesn't take long for nature to gain back. So I've seen some properties where they haven't tamed for it, and it's basically, you know, weeds and you know, plants growing on top of the fake grass, and it's really sad because you can see that nature trying to gain back its rightful place. So I mean, we looked after a garden for a year or so in Bishop Stortford when we did a lot of maintenance, and it was a small garden, and that garden featured in Gardener's World on the telly program. It was made by two brother landscapers that specialise in natural gardens. So a small space had like more species in the middle of the town. You know, in Hatfield Forest down the road, they had this chalk bank and wildflower pathways, 3 different ponds. You know, like. And the space was small, and it was an old couple, and all they had on maintenance is what they did, and we used to go once a week for like 4 hours. So it just goes to show it's not impossible to bring nature even in small places. So I quite agree with what you're saying.
I think with the artificial grass thing, I mean, you said that you've laid lots of it previously. I think it's no good looking backwards because times change, right? But the context where we're all living under now is we all know that we've got some serious climate issues and biodiversity issues, all those kind of things. And I think that our industry in particular is one that is very close to the outside world and nature and wildlife. And if anybody should be kind of, you know, promoting sustainability, it should be us, really. So,
just touching on that just touching on the sustainability, and we don't have long left, but I don't know about you and Adam being a landscaper and stuff. I bag all my waste up. So instead of getting skits, I bag it all up, and we try to recycle a lot, so the wood you know, if you've got a lot of waste, you chop it up
in people's
and it goes into a bag. No, no. I mean, we used to, but with the branded cans, it doesn't work. The same. But you know what I mean? That we go through the waste, but the amount of waste that I create doing a garden, one project. So the cement, you know. So is there any way, being a designer and maybe manufacturers or something like that, need to kind of change what we're working with? Because I mean, cement, we know how bad it is for the environment, but I mean, most of our hard standing is on a cement base. So could we do more like in America, they do open graded sub base where, you know, it's laid on you know, basically grano dust, and the water is allowed to permeate through it, and you don't have cement and stuff like that. So it's ways that we can move forward, but I feel like the industry is not moving that way because I'm still laying everything.
I think from a design perspective, I think where things are moving is they are moving more to a situation now whereby you don't start off with a garden and design all of the landscaping and the plants around it. You start off with a big blank canvas and you say, all of that is plants. Now, what do I need in terms of the hard surfaces to get from A to B, to more that way around? And I think we have to kind of be a little bit more, I think we have to think a little bit more about, you know, how much hardscape do you actually need in the garden, and where you obviously need to have some for practicality and functionality, but what other surfaces might be more appropriate that are permeable and, as you said, don't require that kind of concrete base. I'm not a purist on this, in that I'm not the kind of person that thinks there's not going to be any kind of footprint to building a garden. We don't say that about building a house, you know, and I don't know why we should have different standards applied to us building gardens. But I think we should be looking to change the balance and make it more in favour of soft landscaping in the garden and permeability. And I also think that we should, when we go to a garden, think, right, I'm going to get rid of everything here, take it all off site and start again. I think the more you can incorporate the hardscape that's there, even if it's breaking it up and putting it into your footings or into voids or holes, the more you can design waste into the garden and being taken away, I think the better. Yeah,
and it
totally.
helps with the cost as well. Win-win situation. So because we're nearing to the end, you know, we can have a little, you know, recap, re-chat and stuff like that. I really enjoyed having you on tonight. So, you know,
thanks for joining us.
You are our first non-landscaper guest. I know it's very early on.
See, we're not that bad. Yeah, designers aren't that bad. We're not that.
No, I do believe that you guys are great, and as long as you find the right ones to work for, and vice versa, you know, I think you just need to build those relationships, right? But it was really enjoyable having and seeing your view, and maybe for other landscapers that kind of watch this in the future, if they're thinking of working with a designer.
It's a different perspective as well. I think next time we've got a supplier on, so it's good to get, it's not just landscapers, it's good to get the designer angle or the supplier angle, and it's going to be a good, it's going to be a good mix.
Yeah.
No,
thank you.
I'm enjoying watching you both as well.
Yeah, no, thank you. Well, and we try our best. I try to be funny. You know, you have to be funny, informative, all that stuff. And I wanted to touch on a funny story because actually, you know, I did this polished concrete thing, this workshop. I really enjoyed it. But my wife was saying that I was really stressing because she reminded me when I was a young landscaper. And I'll tell you the story for free, but it's a very embarrassing story. So I was pouring a concrete step. So the guy had a concrete step, but it's all broken and stuff like that. And he wanted it replaced. I was like, no problem. I'll build a shuttering and I'll pour it. And I was very excited. Built the shuttering, and the ready mix lorry came in. My little brother was helping me on that day. And we poured it. I think it was 4 meters of concrete, so you can imagine the volume of concrete is a lot. And it was on the front drive. So I pour, and I'm like, you know, I've got a quarter, like a little bit left, and suddenly the framing just lifts up. And I'm like, all this concrete in the front drive, and I'm like, oh my God, and I'm trying to screw the thing back. Oh, you know what? The worst experience of my life. You know, I've been doing it 10 years, and I can look back and I say, I learned from that. I learned not to do that ever again. But it just goes to show, doesn't it? You know, you learn from your mistakes, but that was a hell of a big one. But here we go. Now we're touching back on the concrete pour I did this week, and it was a lot more enjoyable. Still stressful, but a lot more enjoyable. And actually, I want to see more, how do you say, call it? Architectural. Come on, Adam, help me out here. Architectural. Concrete. I know it's not environmental friendly, and we talked about that, but I like the look of it, I must admit.
Yeah. I'm really interested in looking at, because there are a lot of these eco kind of concrete products now, which I haven't, you know, yet worked with, but I do know other designers that are working with them, and you know, there is an aesthetic which, you know, so that is in at the moment, right? But I think we could look for potentially other ways of you know, achieving it.
The polished concrete, the outdoor kitchens looks incredible.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so enjoyable to do. Honestly, it's a nut, you know, and I called this guy that specializes in concrete, but he does like big roads and stuff. And I called him up to ask him like tips and tricks. And he said, you know, treat it, every slab's different. And he's so right, because, you know, it will dry differently with the wind, the sun, this, and all the troweling you do, you're drawing the water out, it's leaving those marks, those marbling. So I could do the same slab at the same spot on a different day, it'll be different. And I love that. You just don't know what you're going to get.
The night owl.
It's a bit like
concrete, polished concrete textures.
I know, I love it. Maybe it's my new game.
Thank you, Matthew. Appreciate it.
But anyway, guys, thank you for coming on. Matt, you've been great, and look forward to seeing you in the future. So yeah,
okay, guys. Thank you, guys.
And we'll catch you soon. Bye, everyone.